All right. Joining us now, John Carney, co-author of the must-read daily Breitbart Business Digest, and the aforementioned Miranda Devine, Fox News contributor, ace New York Post columnist, and host of the Pod Force One podcast. All right, Miranda, hold on. You're going to be the economist with the great John Carney, all right? But I thought it's very instructive what Scott Bessent said. That's just 5 months or so, but you've seen a complete change, and I think a lot of this has to do with the immigration story. You know, elections matter, policies matter. Policies have changed. The border is now closed. It's really quite remarkable. Basically, we have zero coming in over the border, at least with respect to coming into the U.S. illegally. And this has had a positive economic impact. Now, that's what you and Scott talked about.
Absolutely, because it's slave labour that employers were sort of sponging off, and they were ensuring that American citizens weren't getting those jobs because they have other choices, whereas illegal aliens don't have a lot of choice. And so now these jobs, the employers are having to pay a little bit more, and it's significant. I mean, it's almost a 2% rise in blue-collar wage growth in just the first 5 months of the year. And Scott Bessent did say that that was to do with lowering inflation, so you can get more bang for your buck. It's the illegal aliens going back. And as well, a little bit about, you know, offshoring manufacturing. That's more in the future, but these factory jobs are going to be more plentiful.
John, why doesn't Wall Street understand this? And here's a point. Let's take since January. Okay, so paychecks have gone up. Real paychecks have gone up. At the same time, foreign-born job creation has gone way down. Native-born has gone way up. Wall Street wants it the other way. They prefer the foreign-born because it's cheaper, okay, cheap labor, as Miranda mentioned, as Scott Bessent mentioned. But the other point is the inflation rate hasn't gone up. In other words, slightly more wage increases, which may probably, I mean, the productivity numbers are coming in pretty good. But there's no harm here. That's my point. I don't know why the Fed doesn't acknowledge. They're supposed to be the guardians of inflation, all right? Inflation is coming down. It has something to do with immigration. It has something to do with onshoring. It has something to do with the general state of the economy, maybe people looking forward to tax cuts, whatever. The fact is it's good.
It is
Why
good,
has
Larry.
Jay Powell not acknowledged that? It's always bad. Look, you and I were talking. The Fed lowered its growth, raised its inflation, and its unemployment estimates between now and the end of the year. Based on what?
It makes no sense, Larry. So right now we see that growth has actually increased since the first quarter, but the Fed's projection of growth went down. Inflation is way down from what anybody thought it would be. Even me, who was very positive, I thought inflation was going to come down. It's done much better than what I thought it would be. The Fed raised its inflation projections. They've gone the opposite direction. They used to say data dependent. I would say they're now data resistant. They look at the data and they say the opposite is happening. Look, one of the reasons that wages are doing so well is not just because of the deportations, but because employers now realize that the wave of migrants that they were thinking was going to come over the border isn't coming anymore. So it's not just the people we are showing the door and the people who are picking up their suitcases and going home. It's that the fact that employers realize they have to start giving raises so that they can keep the people they have, so that they can hire people on. It used to be that a lot of these companies could always say, I don't need to raise wages. In a month from now, I'll have 1 million more people crossing the border. They know that's not going to happen again, so they have to start raising wages. We've ignited something very important. That's competition for workers. Competition raises wages. That's what's happening.
By the way, just worth knowing, this is a throwaway, but non-financial productivity, which was Alan Greenspan's old measure in the 1990s when he lowered and eased rates. He wasn't anti-growth. That's growing at 2.5% per year. That's a big number. So I'm going to say the workforce in recent years, for many different reasons, tax cuts, maybe quantum computing and AI, I don't know. But the fact remains productivity is high while wages are high. The workforce is earning their pay increases, which the Fed will never
And that's not inflationary, it's disinflationary.
Of course it is.
When you're encouraging capital investment, Look, companies didn't need to invest in capital improvements when they have millions of, as Miranda was saying, slave labor workers coming over. You don't need to do it because you can always replace it. When you push that out, instead what companies do is they invest in productivity, and that raises wages.
Miranda, what else did you and Scott Bessent talk about? I mean, there was a long article about it. He talked a little bit about him and Elon Musk. I don't know. It wasn't. We may not have come to physical blows, and all of that seems to have patched up. In fact, it's quite remarkable that the whole tiff between Elon Musk and Donald Trump, about which the mainstream left-wing media made so much about a few weeks ago, has gone away. Has gone away.
Well, because Donald Trump didn't really retaliate, he was quite generous-spirited about it. When I interviewed him and asked him about it, he said he bears no ill will. But, you know, the beginning of the big fight was between Elon Musk and Scott Bessent. And that was true. Donald Trump confirmed it. So did Scott Bessent. In a way, he said, we did have our disagreements. But it was a shouting match. Elon Musk shoved him, gave him a bit of a rugby charge. There was swearing and shouting outside Donald Trump's office, and he heard it. He sort of laughed. He said, Donald Trump said, oh, well, these things happen. What Scott Bessent said, well, we did have our disagreements. I think that Elon sees himself as a Viking, and I'm more of a ninja. I rise up, fire, and then submerge below the surface again. So an interesting sort of fighting style, and I guess the ninja always wins out, doesn't he?
But I think the public is really increasingly baffled by this whole Federal Reserve stuff. And I think what Trump is saying, Trump happens to be right. There are lots of reasons that the Fed could be easing interest rates. Central banks around the world have eased interest rates. Yeah. Our central bank never really tells you why. As Edward Lawrence mentioned before, they used to look at the current data. Now they're forecasting. Whatever happens when Donald Trump is president, they won't lower interest rates.
Plausible deniability. Yeah.
Right. Plausible. I mean politically, I'm going to say this does the Fed no good. It's not that Trump is politicizing the Fed. It's that the Fed is politicizing the Fed. That's what I think is happening here.
It's unbelievable that that's happening because, you know, you could say, well, OK, he made a mistake when he said inflation 20% was transitory. Pretty big mistake. He ignored all the data then. And then he gives rate cuts, 2 of them, right before the 2024 election. You know, there was less reason then than to do it now. And it just looks like he was being political, like he was protecting Biden at the front end and at the back end of his presidency. And for what? I mean, you know, he's meant to be an honest broker. I think he's quite well respected. I'm sure it doesn't really, you know, endear him to Donald Trump to be called too late and you know, all this stuff, which is quite funny. But that's Donald Trump just letting off steam because he's so frustrated. Jerome Powell really needs to get with the program and help the growth of the country instead of
That's the key point.
resisting
See,
it.
that's the key point. And, you know, you're in the middle of a war in the Middle East. The United States and its ally Israel are fighting for freedom. All right, they're fighting for Western values, Judeo-Christian values, against these crazy mullahs in Iran. A little protection on the economy is not a bad thing. Christine Lagarde of the ECB, who has managed inflation down, she's eased, 10 times or some such thing. I'll give you the last word, John Carney, because I must say I've watched the Fed. I started my career at the Fed almost 50 years ago. I've been a Fed watcher on and off for different ways. I do not understand what they're doing here.
The Fed is making the same mistake they made under Biden, which is letting their prejudices lead them rather than the data. Right in front of their face, inflation went up during Biden, and they said, no, it's transitory. Our models say it'll go away, and it didn't go away. Right now, we have no inflation. The Fed decides to ignore that and say, no, our models say tariffs will cause inflation. They need to throw the models out the window, pay attention to what's really happening in the economy, start cutting. They should have signaled it. They went the opposite way. They've declared war on America First economic policy. They're going to lose that war because the data isn't going to support them. And once again, Fed Chairman Jay Powell will again, as Donald Trump said, be too late.
Right, too late, too wrong. And there will be personnel changes before long.
It's coming.
All right. John Carney and Miranda Devine. Miranda's going to stick around. We're going to see her later in the show, talk about why Democrats remain so stupid.